Alright, so we just finished covering the first 3 of 7 points, which if we understand, it's going to help us when we go through Song of Solomon from beginning on through to the end, because we won't have to jump around back and forth as much. The first 3 of those points was that Solomon represents Christ in context of Song of Solomon. We showed this in short, but we're going to cover it in more detail when we go through it verse by verse. The second was that the development of the relationship between Solomon and the Shulamite took place very rapidly. They were actually having sex before they were married. And we showed how, in context of Song of Solomon, that this wasn't actually a problem. It doesn't pose any problems with morality and so forth. We covered it in short. If somebody wants to see the deeper, more detailed version, let me know. In my commentary on Song of Solomon, I actually have a whole appendix dedicated to this, but I didn't want to spend a bunch of time on that because this is actually about Song of Solomon, not deuterocanical laws and so forth. The third point was that the physical beauty of the Shulamite in Song of Solomon is used to represent the character of Christ in his disciple or in his church. So let's continue on with point number 4. We're going to start with a verse in Proverbs chapter 25 and it's verse 21. It says, "If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink." So in other words, love your enemies. It's going right along with what Jesus says. Now we're going to read a verse in Proverbs chapter 5, which sounds very contrary to what we just read there. Proverbs chapter 5, we're going to start at verse 15. It says, "Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not strangers with thee." Okay, now, it sounds like it's talking something entirely antagonistic to what we read in Proverbs 25. Proverbs 25 says, if your enemy is thirsty, give him water to drink. But here it says, have your own cistern to drink water out of, and have your own well, and let it be only your own, and don't share it with any strangers. Well, how does that make sense? Well, the way it makes sense is because Proverbs chapter 25 is being literal, but here in Proverbs chapter 5, drinking water is being used as a sexual innuendo to represent indulgence in sexual pleasure. And I'm going to prove that to you here in context of this song, and it'll be more clear as we go through it. But we'll start here. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 1. It says, "My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell." That's a very important verse. Verse number 6, "Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thy honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger, and thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed, and say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. So, if you understand it in context of everything, Proverbs chapter 5 is talking about the strange woman. It says, be warned of her and beware, lest you have regrets. Okay? And then it says, let your fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of your youth. He's not changing topics. He's saying, look, be warned and beware of the strange woman, lest you have all these regrets. Drink waters out of your own cistern. Rejoice with the wife of your youth. Let her be the loving hind and pleasant roe. Let her breasts be the ones that are satisfying you. Not those of a strange woman. Why would you do that? You see, it's actually taught, it's the same thought. But the drinking of water in this is being used as a sexual innuendo to represent indulgence in sexual pleasure. And this is going to be more clear as we go on. But let's read in Proverbs chapter 7 first. This is about the strange woman. Proverbs chapter 7 verse 1, it says, "My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law is the apple of thine eye. Bind them upon thy fingers and write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman. Why? That they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and I beheld among the simple ones, I discerned among the youths, a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner, and he went the way to her house, in the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot, and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Therefore I came forth to meet thee, diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the goodman is not home, he is gone on a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and he will come home at the time appointed. With her much fair speech she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteneth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend unto the words of my mouth. Let not thine heart decline unto her ways. Go not astray in her paths, for she hath cast down many wounded. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death." Now that verse right there is very similar to the one we read in Proverbs chapter 5. It says, her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. And here in chapter 7 it says her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. Almost like going down steps, right? Okay, now the reason I read that to you will make sense when we get here to this next chapter. We're going to read the end of Proverbs chapter 9. Now pay close attention, because we're going to be talking about the strange woman here, and it's going to have another one of those sexual innuendos with drinking water, okay? Pay close attention here. We're going to read Proverbs chapter 9, verse 13. It says, "A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house," kind of like very similar to what we read in Proverbs chapter 7. "She sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith unto him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell." So her guests are in the depths of hell. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. And her feet go down to death, and her steps take hold on hell. Okay? So Proverbs chapter 9 here. This woman, she's sitting at the door of her house, and she's saying to him that wants understanding. What is she saying? She says, stolen waters are sweet. Bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Now this is an adulterous woman. This is a strange woman. Okay, this is the same woman that we're reading about in Proverbs chapter 5 and chapter 7. Here we're reading about it in chapter 9. And she says stolen waters are sweet and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Why would she say that? Is water sweeter if you steal it? I mean, does it? No. It's not. It's water. If it's your water or somebody else's water, it tastes the same. It doesn't become sweeter just because it's stolen. What about if you have a piece of bread and you hide in a corner in a dark closet and close the door and you eat it? Is it more pleasant then? No. She is talking about illegal indulgence in sexual pleasure. See, in Proverbs chapter 5, we read about a holy indulgence in sexual pleasure, and it was being represented by drinking water out of your own cistern, okay? Which you could say would be your wife. Your own well, okay? And here, she's saying that she's saying, look, if you have illegal sex, it's more fun. Okay, and she's using the sexual innuendo of drinking water and eating bread to represent indulgence in sexual pleasure. So, eating food and drinking water is used to represent indulgence in sexual pleasure, whether it's sinful indulgence in sexual pleasure or holy indulgence in sexual pleasure. And this is absolutely fundamental if you would understand the book Song of Solomon. So if you didn't understand any of that, please go through it all over again because you have to understand this point. Now I do want to read to you one more verse evidencing this point. This is in Proverbs chapter 30. Proverbs chapter 30. And verse 20, it says, "Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth, and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness." So what does she do? She eats, wipes her mouth, and says, I have done no wickedness. Well, I'm not an adulterous woman, but I mean, if I can eat and wipe my mouth and say I've done no wickedness. Why is the adulterous woman saying this? Because the adulterous woman doesn't see a problem with what she's doing. This is her lifestyle. She likes this, so she eats. But she's not it's not talking about eating food here. She is indulging in illegal sexual pleasures. She wipes her mouth and she says, I've done no wickedness. Okay? And this is a problem. But do you see how, once again, we're using the eating of food to represent indulgence in sexual pleasure. And this is seen throughout Song of Solomon. There's talking about drinking wine. There's talking about pomegranates and pomegranate juice and figs and apples and, I mean, it just goes on, okay? And so this is why it's critical to understand it, because if you don't, you will never understand Song of Solomon. So this is point number 4. Let's move on to point number 5. Point number 5, we're going to read in Song of Solomon, chapter 4, and verse 12. Song of Solomon, chapter 4, and verse 12. It says, "A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed." A fountain sealed. Do you remember how in Proverbs chapter 5 we read about a fountain? Okay? And that was used to represent what? Wife? Which is being used as the same way here, right? Because Solomon is saying to the Shulamite, a garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. The word spouse there is bride in the Hebrew. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. So the Shulamite is a garden. Okay? Now it makes sense why when you read Song of Solomon, it seems like they're always talking about fruits and flowers and stuff. Well, because she's a garden. Her body is a garden. There's an orchard of pomegranates in this garden. There's all kinds of good stuffs in this garden. Food to eat, and Solomon's always wanting to eat food and fruit. Does it make sense? See, now it's starting to make a little bit more sense. So I want you to understand this point here, that the woman, the Shulamite in Song of Solomon, is a garden. Okay? A garden is a metaphor being used to symbolize her. Okay? A garden with fruits and flowers and stuff. So that's point number 5. It becomes more evident as we go along, but so it's real simple. There's not too much to talk about, but that's point number 5 there. It's Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 12. It's pretty clear there. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. So she is a garden, okay? Point number 6, we're going to read Song of Solomon 5, 2 through 7. 5, 2 through 7. She says, "I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled, for my head is filled with dew, and my locks with drops of the night." But what does she say? I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? I have washed my feet, how shall I defile them? My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. I rose up to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved hath withdrawn himself, and he was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchmen that went about the city found me. They smote me. They wounded me. The keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. Now you have to understand, this is the queen of Israel. This is Solomon's wife, and she's being beat up by the watchmen. We're talking metaphors here, okay? And that's the case with the previous verses there. But, okay, so what's being depicted here is Solomon is outside. He's knocking on a door, trying to get to the Shulamite, okay? Trying to get the Shulamite to open. Well, Solomon represents Christ, so Christ is knocking on the door, and the Shulamite represents the church, so Christ is knocking on the door, trying to get the church to open to him. Where else do we see this? If you read it in Revelation chapter 3, let's read it there. Revelation chapter 3, most people know this verse, I would say. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, it says, Behold, this should be red letters in your Bible, if you have a red letter Bible, so it means it's the words of Jesus. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me. So, Jesus is speaking to any man here. Now, not every person lives in a home and has a door. Jesus is knocking on the door of our hearts, and he is wanting to get in. And that is what is taking place in the Song of Solomon, chapter 5. Solomon is, he's knocking, he's wanting to get in to what? If he's knocking, there's a door, right? Okay, well, what is the Shulamite? In the last point, we showed how the Shulamite was a garden. What was it? Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 12. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. In other words, it's enclosed, and it actually has a gate and a door to get into it, okay? And so when Solomon is knocking on the door, that's the door to her garden. He wants to get into that garden so he can enjoy that garden, okay? And so what is being depicted here is Solomon is wanting to have sexual intercourse with the Shulamite, okay? And so when you look at this all together, Jesus is knocking on the door of our hearts, wanting to dwell in us, and this is illustrated by Solomon's desire to have sexual intercourse with his wife. Are you following? And this is more plain, and it'll be more plain when we go through it verse by verse. But even just the mention there of her feet, she says, I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? By the way, a coat or as a garment, and garments are used to represent righteousness. She says, I put off my righteousness, and it's not convenient to put it back on, right? So she shut Jesus out of the heart. Okay, we're going to cover this in a little more detail. But she says, I've washed my feet. How shall I defile them? The word feet there, if you read it in the Hebrew, by euphemism or by sexual innuendo, if you read it just right there in the Strong's Hebrew dictionary, it says, by euphemism, it means the pudenda. It's her vagina. Okay, she's like, I've washed myself. I don't want to get the area dirty. Okay, and So just the point again, in short, the point is that Christ's desire to dwell in our hearts is symbolized by Solomon's desire to have sexual intercourse with his wife, to enter into and enjoy his garden. Okay, and this is a very powerful thing, and we'll cover it more in detail when we go through it by verse, but the spiritual insights that has. I mean, the husband's desire to have sex with his wife is used to represent Christ's desire to dwell in our hearts. It's very intense. It's very passionate. It is a must. And what happened? What happened? The woman rejected. The woman rejected Solomon. I mean, initially she was like, that's not convenient, but then she changed her mind, but it was too late. Solomon had left. Jesus had left. Okay, then this is a really awesome song. Okay, but I wanted you to understand this point that the husband's desire to have sexual intercourse with his wife is similar to Christ's desire to dwell in our hearts, to the point that the one is compared to the other. Okay, Christ's desire to dwell in our heart is symbolized by Solomon's desire to dwell in his wife and to have intercourse with his wife, to enter into his garden. Okay, so that's point number 6. The last point, this is in Song of Solomon, chapter 8. Isaiah, Ecclesiastes. Song of Solomon, chapter 8. We're going to be reading verses 8 through 10. It says, "We have a little sister, and she hath no breasts. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for?" Spoken for is somebody asked for her hand in marriage. Okay? So we have a little sister. She has no breasts, so she's still young. She hasn't reached puberty yet. But what are we going to do for her when she is spoken for, when somebody asks for her hand? The answer was, if she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver, and if she be a door, we will enclose her with boards of silver. I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. Then was I in his eyes as one that found favor. Now, the siblings are there, they ask the question, and the answer is, if she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver. The word wall in the Hebrew is wall of defense. Okay? So if she be a wall of defense, we will build upon her a palace, or fortress in the Hebrew, of silver. And if she be a door, now the word door in the Hebrew is a swinging door. So if you have a wall of defense, that's a good thing, right? But a door doesn't just float in space. The door is going to be in a wall, right? So if she's a door, if she's a wall of defense, that's good. We're going to increase the defense. But if she's a swinging door whereby intruders could go in and out, we're going to do what? We're going to enclose her with boards of cedar. Okay? But what kind of wall is this? Well, when we read in verse 10, the Shulamite says, I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. She says, I am a wall of defense, and my breasts are like towers. Now, how can a woman's breasts, or how can a woman breasts be like towers of defense? How can a woman be a wall of defense and her breasts like towers of defense for her husband, or for Solomon in this? Because when she was a wall of defense for Solomon, and when her breasts were like towers of defense for Solomon, she then found favor in his eyes. It's pretty simple the way that a woman's breast can be like towers of defense for her husband. They're towers of sexual defense. In other words, she keeps his attention. Okay? He's interested in her. As a guy, he naturally wants to see a naked woman, and so she shows him things that keeps his eyes on her, so that way he's not looking for other women to look at. He's not looking for other relationships, okay? She is sexually satisfying him, and in this sense, she is a wall of defense for her husband. Her breasts are like towers of defense, okay? And so when it says, if she be a wall, so if she's a wall of defense, the little sister, if she's a wall of defense for the relationship, a wall of sexual defense for a relationship, we're going to increase her defense, okay? We're going to make her be an even stronger wall of sexual defense. And if she is a door, a swinging door, that would be bad. That would be like being flirty, or like not paying attention, and somebody else could come in the relationship. If that was the case, they were going to enclose her with boards of cedar. In other words, they were going to make sure that they taught her how to be a sexual defense for her husband. And so the point here is that when we talk about a wall in the book of Song of Solomon, it is talking about not just any wall, but a wall of sexual defense. And that'll be very important when we get into chapter 2 of the book Song of Solomon. So these are the 7 points. Please keep them all in mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. We'll be starting at the beginning and going straight through the book Song of Solomon, and we'll have a lot of fun. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.